Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to another episode of International Relations this week. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. under this series, we have been covering important geopolitical developments that have a bearing on India's national interests. The purpose of all these initiatives on our YouTube channel is to help you prepare for UPSC Prelims and Mains. So now that UPSC notification is out, starting from this month, we are introducing a change in the structure of discussion under IR this week. This is entirely designed to help you prepare for the upcoming prelims and also for the mains exam. What we will do is, along with discussing all the important topics in detail, we shall also cover one international organization going forward. We shall also take up important places in news under this discussion. Because if you have seen previous UPSC papers, a lot of questions come from international organizations, treaties and conventions. A lot of map-based questions will also come under places in news. If you look at the last year's paper, there were 14 questions from international relations. So many questions will be related to the places that are in news. So you have to have good map reading skills. And you'll also have questions related to international organizations, treaties and conventions. So that's the reason why we will cover 2-3 topics from a mains point of view, have a detailed discussion on important topics that are in news, and we'll also pick one international organization or a treaty or a convention every week, and we'll also take up places that are in news. I'll show you the map of the region, help you understand important locations, so you'll be able to answer any prelims question based on these places. Now all you have to do is support these initiatives by liking our video, commenting below, and by subscribing to our channel. So let's see if you can help us hit 2000 likes on this video. With this, let's start with today's discussion, and the first topic is related to India-Turkey relations. This week has been very unfortunate. A devastating disaster has hit Turkey and as well as Syria. I'm sure all of you would know about this, you would have heard about it. Multiple earthquakes have hit Turkey and Syria in this region, in the Gaziantep region, where the Arabian plate meets the Anatolian plate and the African plate. This is a high seismic zone stretching all the way from Italy, Greece and Cyprus, going all the way to Turkey and Syria. This whole belt is a seismically active zone. The Mediterranean region has been seismically active. Countries like Italy frequently witness earthquakes, and the other side of this belt, where Turkey meets Syria around this region, is also a hot spot for seismic activity. So high intensity earthquakes have hit the region and it has caused massive devastation. Buildings have been brought to the ground, thousands of people have been killed. According to latest information, the death count is all set to cross 10,000. And the most unfortunate thing is that the region where the earthquake has hit, it was a region where the Syrian refugees had taken shelter. I hope you know that Syria has been going through a civil war since 2011. So people who have escaped the conflict here to save their lives, they have moved across the border to Turkey, settled over here near these Kurdish region. And the very same region has been hit, causing massive devastation. So considering the extent of the damage, India has stepped up on moral grounds and on humanitarian grounds. India has offered immediate assistance to Turkey and as well as to Syria. This is something India always does in its foreign policy. We always extend HADR assistance or humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Humanitarian assistance and disaster relief is provided by India to any country which is hit by a major disaster. India has a very rich history of helping out countries in the field of disaster management. We have acquired the required military capabilities and as well as the disaster management capabilities through which we can provide this assistance to various countries. Not just to friendly countries, but even to countries with whom we have issues, such as Turkey. India-Turkey have had a strained relationship in the last few years. We are going to discuss that. Despite the problematic relations we have, despite Turkey being hostile to India, India has shown a gesture, a goodwill gesture, as a part of its soft diplomacy. During this time of crisis, you need to keep aside your tensions, geopolitical issues and rivalries. This is a time where humanity has to triumph, and India has done exactly the same. India has dispatched the National Disaster Response Force, the NDRF, which specializes in search and rescue operations and in providing immediate medical assistance. Along with NDRF personnel, the Indian Army Field Hospital has airlifted one unit in the C-17 Globemaster aircraft of the Indian Air Force. You can see the aircraft over here in this image. This is a large cargo transport aircraft that we have procured from the United States. It provides strategic airlift capability to transport men, equipment, weapons, and even disaster relief material to far away regions. So India has a rich history of providing such assistance, and we have stepped up when Turkey and Syria needed India's help. India has already sent all the relief material along with the professionals who can help out Turkey and the victims of this disaster. Now, this is where you need to understand the kind of HADR assistance we have been providing over the years. India has offered such assistance to various countries, be it Sri Lanka, be it Bangladesh, Nepal, even Thailand and Indonesia, then Maldives, and even East African countries such as Mozambique, Tanzania. They have all received disaster management assistance from India. When Sri Lanka was devastated by the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, India rushed immediate assistance to Sri Lanka and also to Thailand and Maldives. During this tsunami, India itself was hit. Especially the east coast of India had taken a very big hit. Despite India getting affected, we rushed disaster management assistance to other countries in the Indian Ocean. When Nepal was hit by a devastating earthquake in 2015, India carried out Operation Maitri to provide HADR support to Nepal. When Bangladesh is hit by repeated cyclones, even Myanmar, because they are located in the Bay of Bengal, which is highly prone to severe intensity cyclones, we provide disaster management assistance to Bangladesh and Myanmar. Even Mozambique and Tanzania along the east coast of Africa are very prone to cyclones. Recently, last year, when Mozambique was hit by a cyclone, the Indian Navy reached out and provided disaster management assistance. So this is a rich tradition that India has established all across the Indian Ocean and even beyond. We are the first responder. We respond to any crisis, be it a natural disaster or a man-made disaster. Even when the pandemic broke out, India rushed similar assistance to various countries across the Indian Ocean. Under Mission Sagar, the Indian Navy dispatched medical supplies, oxygen supplies, and all the other essential drugs to help various countries in the Indian Ocean to combat the pandemic. So this is what you need to learn from this episode. India will always prioritize humanitarian moral obligations, and we have a rich history of helping out countries whether or not we have friendly relations with them. So this brings us to the next part of our discussion, that is India-Turkey relations. Now, why did I mention earlier that Turkey has been problematic to India? Why did I mention that this relationship has been strained? This is because in the last few years, Turkey has been acting hostile to India. Traditionally, we have had very good relations with Turkey. In West Asia, Turkey is a major power, along with Iran and Saudi Arabia. We have had historically good relations with Turkey. But despite this, of late, Turkey has been taking a hostile stand against India, and it has been seen to be backing Pakistan's position at important international platforms such as the United Nations and OIC, or the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. At these international platforms, Pakistan repeatedly targets India over India's internal issues. Pakistan tries to internationalize India's internal problems, such as the Kashmir dispute, for example. When India revoked Article 370 and the special status for Jammu and Kashmir, and when J&K was reorganized into two union territories, Pakistan opposed it, and it tried to internationalize the issue by bringing up the matter at OIC and UN. Even when the controversial Citizenship Amendment Act was brought out, and when it led to large protests in India, Pakistan took up the issue at UN and OIC. So whenever Pakistan took up such initiatives, Turkey was seen to be backing Pakistan. This is a result of Turkey's positioning in West Asia as a leader of the Muslim world, and also result of the internal chaos that Turkey has been witnessing. See, from 1950s, Turkey was known for its secular credentials. It was known as an open, moderate society. But under the current president, Recep Erdogan, Turkey has been turning more conservative. Under Erdogan, Turkey has become more conservative, and it is competing with other major powers in the region such as Saudi Arabia and Iran to emerge as a leader of the region and also to emerge as a leader of the Muslim world. This leads Turkey to take a controversial position even against India, and it is seen to be backing Pakistan on several controversial issues. So this deeply affects Indian interests, and hence India-Turkey relations have been strained in the last few years. Recep Erdogan has repeatedly brought up the Kashmir issue and criticized India while addressing the United Nations in the last few years. So India obviously has taken offense to all these developments, and Prime Minister Modi even skipped visiting Turkey while he was visiting other West Asian countries. No senior Indian leader has visited the country in several years. The relations have been downgraded as well by India, and even some of the trade relations have been downgraded by the Indian side. India has even countered Turkey by criticizing Turkey's position, and we have even brought up the Turkey-Cyprus dispute, reminding Turkey that even Turkey is facing several internal and external problems, and India could also capitalize on it. With regard to the Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict, where Turkey is directly involved, India took a position again just because we had to counter Turkey and put pressure on Turkey. We have brought up the Cyprus dispute as well, and we have urged Turkey to follow the UNSC resolution regarding the Cyprus dispute. So this is India's way of countering Turkey's hostility, and India has put diplomatic pressure on Turkey. So this has led to a breakdown of relations. But during this time of disaster, we have managed to keep aside the rivalry and the geopolitics. And based on humanitarian moral obligations, India has stepped up. It was one of the first countries to sympathize with Turkey and Syria, and we have immediately dispatched disaster relief material and disaster assistance to both the countries. So it's a very, very important development and can be very relevant for both prelims and mains. Now moving on to the second topic, we have a very big development from our neighbor Pakistan. Former President Pervez Musharraf passed away just a few days back. So this gives us an opportunity to talk about the troubled legacy that the former Pakistani leader leaves behind. Pervez Musharraf was an army chief, later became a military dictator, led the country for several years, and he was directly responsible for very hostile relations with India. Under him, India-Pakistan relations suffered immensely, and later he seemed to have transformed a little as he was seen to be involved in certain peace initiatives with India during the end of his term. So he leaves behind a very complicated and troubled legacy, and I think this is the right opportunity to talk about Pervez Musharraf and examine India-Pakistan relations during his term as the president of the country. So let's carry out a quick analysis which can help you better understand India-Pakistan relations. First, we'll look at the early years of Pervez Musharraf and his rise through the ranks of the Pakistani army. As a young soldier, Pervez Musharraf was part of the Pakistani army, and he has fought against India in both the 1965 and 1971 wars. The 1971 war was a humiliating defeat for Pakistan, and it left behind a huge impact. Pakistan saw this as a humiliating moment as India broke Pakistan into two and liberated Bangladesh. So obviously Pervez Musharraf was deeply influenced by these developments. He was directly involved in this war as a young soldier, and he probably started breeding intense rivalry against India right from his formation days. The interesting point is Pervez Musharraf was born in Delhi. It was during partition that his family migrated, and later he settled in Pakistan. So after joining the army and rising up through the ranks of the Pakistani army, he emerged as the army chief in 1998. He rose through the ranks and eventually became the army chief, which I hope you know is the most powerful position in Pakistan's politics. Because in Pakistan, there exists a dual power center. The Pakistani civilian government, which is elected, is just a namesake government. Pakistan is a democracy for the sake of it. The civilian government is more of a puppet in the hands of the army and the ISI, which represent the deep state of Pakistan, the hidden part of the Pakistani state. The civilian government, which is elected, does not have any real authority, whereas all the powers are vested in the hands of the deep state, which is the Pakistani army and its intelligence agency, the ISI. So there exists a dual power center in Pakistan, and all the big decisions are made by the deep state headed by the Pakistani army. So naturally, the army chief becomes the most powerful person in Pakistan and plays a critical role with regard to Pakistan's relations with India. So Pervez Musharraf became the army chief under then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. And immediately he started creating more problems for India. As the army chief, he planned a major intrusion into Kargil. He planned and executed a Pakistani intrusion into Kargil, which is Indian territory, and he is considered as the architect and the mastermind of the Kargil conflict. But before this, in February 1999, the Lahore summit had taken place between India and Pakistan. Because see, this was a period of heightened tensions between the two sides. In 1998, both countries had tested nuclear weapons. There were a few terror attacks going on in India, which was sponsored by Pakistan as well. So this period was a very tense period in the relationship. So now that both possessed nuclear weapons and tensions were present, most big powers were worried about a possible conflict between India and Pakistan. The US especially was deeply concerned, and it was putting a lot of pressure on both India and Pakistan to talk and establish a peaceful relationship. The US was pressurizing then Indian Prime Minister Vajpayee, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif, to talk to each other. This led to a historic summit, the Lahore summit. Even Prime Minister Vajpayee was known for his outreach, friendly outreach towards Pakistan in order to repair the relations. So all these developments led to the historic Lahore summit, where a number of peace initiatives were taken up. Because of the Lahore summit, bus and rail connectivity was opened up again. New bus services were launched connecting Delhi and Islamabad, Amritsar and Lahore. Train services were launched. Border trade was opened up along the border areas. Bilateral trade was promoted. And a number of trade-related, economic-related initiatives were brought out following the Lahore summit. Lahore summit was seen as a success as far as stabilizing the relations between India and Pakistan was concerned. This led to discussions on controversial subjects as well, such as terrorism, Kashmir, etc. So a lot of progress had been achieved under Prime Minister Vajpayee and Nawaz Sharif. And just when India and Pakistan were appearing to get closer, the Pakistani army hit back with the Kargil intrusion. This was a planned attempt to trigger tensions again between India and Pakistan. Because the deep state of Pakistan, led by the army and the ISI, has always resisted any friendly relations between the two governments. If India and Pakistan get closer through any talks and negotiations, if they launch any new initiatives, it's an established pattern that the deep state will strike back. It will create some kind of problem for India, either through a terror attack or through an intrusion, to ensure that the friendly relations which are growing is broken. So one such attempt was made by the Pakistani army in 1999, when Pervez Musharraf was the army chief. He's seen as the architect of this Kargil intrusion, which eventually pushed India to conflict. It led to a limited conflict between India and Pakistan, where India eventually threw out the Pakistani intruders and retook the Kargil heights. So this again increased tensions between both the sides. And please note, this is the first ever conflict that mankind has seen, where two nuclear armed rivals directly fought a war with each other. So this was a war fought under the shadow of nuclear weapons. So obviously there was a lot of global pressure on both the sides to tone down the tensions, and the Pakistani army was in a direct conflict with the Pakistani government under Nawaz Sharif. So a tug of war, a power struggle had begun between Pervez Musharraf and Nawaz Sharif. Nawaz Sharif tried to sideline Pervez Musharraf, but Pervez Musharraf hit back in October 1999 by toppling the Pakistani government, by removing Nawaz Sharif from power, and by capturing political authority in the country. The Pakistani army executed a military coup. A bloodless military coup was executed by removing the elected government, and the Pakistani military captured power. Thus, Pervez Musharraf emerged as the military dictator, as the leader of the country, and became the president of Pakistan. So under his leadership, fresh attempts were made to push terrorism into Jammu and Kashmir. Afghan Mujahideen fighters were introduced on a large scale to create destabilization in J&K. The tensions remained constantly high, and this was followed by the hijacking of IC-814 in December 1999. Pakistani terrorists hijacked an Indian aircraft from Nepal, and this hijacked aircraft was taken outside of India as Indian government failed to contain the aircraft within Indian airspace. The confusion and the mismanagement of this crisis allowed the terrorists, the hijackers, to take the aircraft out of India, which was taken to Lahore, then Dubai, and finally it landed in Kandahar, which was in Afghanistan. In 1999, Afghanistan was ruled by the Taliban. The Taliban was in power. And as you know, Taliban is controlled by the ISI. It is seen as an asset of the Pakistani army and the ISI. So immediately the hijacked aircraft was surrounded by Taliban fighters, and India had no other option but to negotiate with the hijackers in order to secure the release of the hostages. During this hijacking incident, India ended up releasing 3 dreaded terrorists from custody. In order to save the lives of the hostages, India had to agree for a prisoner swap. We had to agree for an exchange, and 3 dreaded terrorists were released, and one of them was Masood Azhar. Masood Azhar would later go on to establish Jaish-e-Mohammed with the help of Pakistan, which has carried out many major attacks against India. So when all these developments were happening, it was Pervez Musharraf who was at the helm of affairs in Pakistan. Later, as the 9/11 attacks happened, which was carried out by Al-Qaeda, that was sheltered by the Taliban government in Afghanistan, the US declared war against Afghanistan and the Taliban government. The US led an invasion by a coalition force and toppled the Taliban government. So in this war, in this American war against Taliban and Al-Qaeda, US relied heavily on Pakistani support in order to target the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. But Pakistan, being a duplicitous state, which works closely with terror groups, which has sheltered various terror outfits, protected the top leaders of Taliban and Al-Qaeda while parallelly assisting the US in the so-called war on terrorism. So while these developments were happening in the Afghanistan-Pakistan region, Pakistan was forced by US to talk to India again and ensure that stability exists in this relationship. US would pressurize India as well, the Vajpayee government, because the US did not want any distraction from its Afghan war. US wanted Pakistan to fully focus in Afghanistan and give complete support to the American invasion. So during this period, there was an attempt to repair the relationship because primarily the US was pushing both the countries. So Pervez Musharraf over the years would have 5 important meetings with Indian Prime Ministers, 2 of them with Atal Bihari Vajpayee and 3 of them with Manmohan Singh, the next Prime Minister. With regard to these meetings, Agra Summit was a very, very important meet. Pervez Musharraf visited India, met with Prime Minister Vajpayee in 2001, and this summit ended as a failure. This was right before the 9/11 attacks. This summit failed because both India and Pakistan took very harsh positions, rigid positions. India wanted to talk about terrorism first, but Pakistan refused and said it wants to talk about Kashmir. India said talks and terrorism cannot go hand in hand. When Pakistan is sponsoring terrorism against India, how can India talk to this country? So these positions taken by India-Pakistan led to the failure of the summit, and all the previous arrangements that were created through the Lahore summit, through the Lahore declaration, were also cast aside by Pervez Musharraf. All the trade initiatives, the people-to-people exchanges, they all started falling apart. Under Lahore declaration, both India and Pakistan had agreed for a joint statement on terrorism as well. In fact, indirectly Pakistan had admitted that terrorism in India is emanating from Pakistani soil. This is one reason which pushed the Pakistani army to push out Nawaz Sharif. So all the gains of Lahore summit was lost as Agra summit ended as a failure. Then after the 9/11 attacks and after US invaded Afghanistan, as the US was pressurizing Pakistan to help targeting Taliban and Al-Qaeda, we witnessed a major attack against the Indian Parliament carried out by the Jaish-e-Mohammed. Jaish-e-Mohammed had been recently formed by Masood Azhar after India had released him from custody. So this group carried out a major attack against the Indian Parliament, against the very temple of Indian democracy, that heightened tensions again between the two countries. This again happened under Pervez Musharraf. This led Prime Minister Vajpayee to retaliate, and India tried to mobilize its troops under Operation Parakram to punish Pakistan. But unfortunately, India couldn't launch a strike against Pakistan as Operation Parakram ended as a failure for India. India couldn't quickly mobilize the troops, and the delay in mobilization allowed Pakistan to carry out a counter mobilization, and it led to a military standoff for several months between the two sides. So again, tensions were very high and there was every possibility of a war breaking out. So the US would intervene again to put pressure on India, Pakistan, on Vajpayee and Musharraf to scale down the tensions. So following all these tense developments and following the American pressure, finally India-Pakistan agreed to uphold the ceasefire. They agreed to uphold the ceasefire which was formalized under the 1949 Karachi Agreement that was signed after the first India-Pakistan war. They agreed to uphold the ceasefire, and since then, the scale of violence and terrorism slightly declined in Kashmir and also across India. There was a slight decline in cross-border infiltration because of the ceasefire agreement which was upheld in 2003. It was after this that Pervez Musharraf started slightly changing and started showing a slightly friendly behavior towards India. From 2004 onwards, several important summits and meetings took place. For example, the SAARC summit, where Pervez Musharraf and the Indian Prime Minister both agreed to discuss several important issues, and they established a composite dialogue to talk about all contentious issues, including the Kashmir dispute and terrorism. This was seen as a progress because at South Asia Summit, which is represented by SAARC, both the leaders had agreed to talk about the pressing challenges, that is both Kashmir and terrorism. This was seen as a slight progress in the relationship, and it was followed by a period of slight improvement after Prime Minister Manmohan Singh came to power. Just like his predecessor, Vajpayee, Manmohan Singh also tried to reach out to Pakistan to reset the relationship and tried to restore some normalcy in the relationship. And this time, Pervez Musharraf was seen to be cooperating slightly to an extent because internally, Pervez Musharraf was facing a crisis. He was facing a challenge to his authority. There was a crisis brewing within the army, which was looking to throw out Pervez Musharraf. Various political parties were also trying to remove Pervez Musharraf, and as a result, it pushed Pervez Musharraf to slightly change his policies and approach towards India. We even saw cricket diplomacy being played out in 2005 under Pervez Musharraf. Pakistan was visiting India. There were a series of test matches and ODI matches being held, and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh utilized the opportunity to invite Pervez Musharraf and to engage in discussions on key issues while participating and witnessing the cricket match between India and Pakistan. So this gave birth to the term cricket diplomacy. This was used again during the 2011 World Cup when India-Pakistan met each other at semi-finals at Mohali. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh invited the then Prime Minister Gilani to witness the match, to enjoy the cricket match while conducting diplomacy on the sidelines. So this was seen as a unique approach by the Manmohan Singh government, by the Indian government. A unique approach where diplomacy and sports were being blended in order to create a softer approach and reduce the pressure and to take the attention of the media and the public away from the high intense India-Pakistan relations. Then it was reported that following this slight improvement in the relationship, a back-channel diplomatic initiative was opened between Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Pervez Musharraf. It has been said that Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Pervez Musharraf appointed their special envoys who would meet secretly in third countries to discuss key contentious issues away from the glare of the public and the media. Since India-Pakistan relationship is very sensitive to pressure from media and public and the opposition, the two leaders had opened a back channel negotiation, back channel diplomatic negotiations were being held, and key issues were being discussed, reportedly Kashmir dispute, Siachen dispute, and Sir Creek dispute. But right before anything concrete could be achieved, right before anything could be resolved, we saw a series of adverse developments in 2007 and 2008 which ruptured the relations again. In 2007, former Prime Minister of Pakistan Benazir Bhutto was assassinated. She was conducting a public rally and she was assassinated, and this assassination was blamed on Pervez Musharraf. It was alleged that the President of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, had got the former Prime Minister assassinated for political reasons as political pressure was mounting. Around the same time, the various terror groups that Pakistan had nurtured and cultivated, they had all started organizing against Pakistan itself, because terror groups were seeing through the game of Pakistan. Terror groups were not happy that Pakistan was helping US target the Taliban, Al-Qaeda and other terror groups, which were like brother organizations for these Pakistan-based terror outfits. So at Lal Masjid, which is a historic location, a historic mosque in Islamabad, a number of terrorists started accumulating and they laid siege to Lal Masjid. So hundreds of terrorists with weapons were accumulating at this important site, and it was increasing pressure on Pervez Musharraf. So following the siege of Lal Masjid by terrorist outfits, Pervez Musharraf ordered a military operation that led to large-scale destruction. Hundreds of terrorist Pakistani soldiers were killed in this Pakistani army operation, and it led to heightened pressure on Pervez Musharraf. It gave rise to many anti-Pak terror groups. It led to the rise of TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or the Pakistan branch of Taliban, which currently is posing a very serious threat to Pakistan. Pakistan Taliban has been targeting the Pakistani state, looking to topple the Pakistani state. You have seen in the last 3 months, it has scaled up terror attacks. It has broken the ceasefire with Pakistani government. It has carried out a series of high-profile attacks, including the bombing that happened a couple of weeks ago at Peshawar. Right? So the rise of TTP was enabled following the Lal Masjid incident, where Pervez Musharraf ordered a military operation to flush out the terrorists. So all these events, it culminated with the resignation of Pervez Musharraf. Political pressure was building against him. Terror groups, radical groups that he had nurtured had all turned against him and the Pakistani state. So under this pressure, Pervez Musharraf resigned in 2008, just few months before the Mumbai attacks, the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. So after stepping down, he was targeted by the successive governments for all the atrocities he had committed. He was alleged for getting involved in corrupt activities, for violating human rights, and for treason as well against the state of Pakistan. He was delivered the death punishment by the Nawaz Sharif government, which came back to power later. So Pervez Musharraf fled the country and he led a life in exile in London and Dubai. The last few years he spent in London and Dubai in exile without being allowed to return to Pakistan. Because if he were to return, he would be arrested and sentenced to death. So he spent his last years in exile and eventually he has passed away as well a few days ago. Now, see, the topic in itself may not be too relevant for the exam, but the troubled legacy that Pervez Musharraf has left behind is very relevant for India-Pakistan relations. It helps you develop a better understanding of India-Pakistan relations during the difficult period from 1998 to 2008. This decade was a very chaotic, volatile decade for India-Pakistan relations. And Pervez Musharraf was right at the top as the army chief and later as the military dictator and the president of Pakistan. So that is why the topic becomes relevant for the exams. Now moving on to the third topic, India and Russia are exploring alternate payment routes. Because see, India is importing a lot of defense equipment from Russia along with oil. Correct? Russia is a major oil supplier. We have increased our oil imports from Russia, especially after the Ukraine war started. After Russia was hit with economic sanctions, Russia started offering discounted oil, and India has been buying up most of the Russian oil, and we have been paying for the Russian oil as well through alternate payment routes. Because when economic sanctions are placed on Russia and Russian banks, it has become very challenging for India to make the payments. So the same problem has been affecting the defense payments as well, because we import a lot of defense equipment. Various Indian institutions like the Indian Army, Air Force, Navy, the DRDO, ISRO, they all procure a lot of equipment from Russia, and around 28,000 crores are due. This is the defense payments which is pending since several months. We have procured the S-400 air defense missile system. We have procured naval ships, missiles, rockets, and various spare parts for the Indian armed forces. But we are not able to repay Russia. We are not able to make the payments because of the stringent Western sanctions on the Russian government and Russian financial institutions and Russian banks. Indian banks and financial institutions are not in a position to carry out the transactions. If we were to make the payment using the dollar-denominated system, it will invite sanctions against Indian institutions as well. So that is why Indian banks, Indian financial institutions have been hesitant, and the Indian government has been holding back these payments. So that is why India and Russia are exploring alternate routes of payment to bypass the dollar-dominated system. In order to bypass the Western sanctions, alternate payment routes are being explored, and this is something India has already done with countries like Iran. Even when Iran was placed under sanctions by the US, India had bypassed the American sanctions, and we had provided for alternate payment routes for the oil that we were importing from Iran. So now there are concerns that if we don't fulfill the payment, it might affect the delivery of Russian defense equipment, Russian military spare parts, which could affect the preparedness of our armed forces as well. So that is why all the stakeholders involved, including the Reserve Bank of India, the Finance Ministry, the armed forces, right, and the two governments, they're all exploring different payment routes through which they can bypass the sanctions. The oil refiners who are importing Russian oil and gas, they have already started an alternate payment, and they are using dirhams of the United Arab Emirates. They are using UAE's currency and its banking system to carry out the payments, as Dubai-based traders have bypassed the sanctions. So through these Dubai-based institutions, by using dirham, which is the currency of UAE, we are carrying out payments for the oil supplies, oil and gas supplies. But this is not sustainable in the long term, because Western sanctions will hit this route as well. So 3 new alternate routes are being explored, and one of them is to start making payments in the Chinese yuan or continue with the dirham payments, which will be converted to the Russian ruble. Instead of making dollar-based payments or relying on other Western currencies like the euro, India and Russia are planning to move away from Western-denominated currencies and markets, and they are planning to use either the UAE dirham. The Indian rupee would be used to convert to dirham, and this would be further converted to Russian ruble to make the payments happen. This is the current route which oil refiners are using. The other suggestion is to use the Chinese yuan, as China, Russia also have bypassed the American sanctions. But India is not comfortable with this suggestion because of the tensions between India and China. We don't want to rely on the Chinese currency and China's financial banking system, that too for our energy imports, which is strategically vital for India. So India is not comfortable in relying on the Chinese yuan. This involves defense imports as well, defense payments. So it's a very sensitive matter. So India is not eager to rely on the Chinese yuan. So for now, dirham-based transactions are being made, and which is further being converted into the Russian ruble. Other than this route, the other option which India and Russia are exploring is to come out with a hybrid sovereign bond, where the government of India will guarantee that the payment will be made at a future date. There is a proposal that RBI and the government of India could issue a bond similar to a sovereign bond. So according to the bond, India will honor this payment at a later date when things stabilize, when sanctions are probably lifted, and we are going to pay not just the face value but also with interest. This is also a viable route. We are just postponing the payment, guaranteeing Russia with a bond that we are going to pay at a later date. It provides guarantee to both the parties and establishes a fixed rate at which India will be paying Russia at a later date. So to assure this payment, India has suggested that we will open a bank account here in India. We will deposit the payment in rupees as a guarantee. and the bond will be tied to this bank account, to the deposits which will be made in the Indian bank. The 28,000 crore which is pending, it will be deposited in an Indian bank in Indian rupees, and linked to that, a bond will be issued to the Russian government. It means India will honor this payment at a later date when the sanctions are lifted. So this is the second route which is being explored. And the third route is a suggestion by Russia. Russia has suggested that India can provide shares in a government-owned entity, in public sector units, which Russia can liquidate at a later date. India has many successful public sector units, right, which are listed on the stock market. So Russia has suggested that India can provide a share in these companies, allocate a share to the Russian companies, and they will liquidate this at a later date, and they will ensure the payment is carried forward. So these are the three suggestions which have come up, the three routes which have been suggested. So both the sides will quickly finalize a payment route, because we can't afford to delay the defense imports and the defense payments. Similarly, we want the oil payments, oil imports to continue as well. Like I said, we are not new to bypassing the sanctions. We have done it with Iran. We have done it previously with Russia as well. A few years back, when we signed the S-400 deal, India-Russia deal was threatened by the CATSA law of US, Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, which is a US law. It threatened to bring secondary sanctions on India, as India was importing defense equipment from Russia. This American law counters America's adversaries, as the name itself suggests. It counters three adversary states of the US, that is Russia, North Korea, and Iran. So these three adversary states of US are placed under primary sanctions. And any other country which is trading with these countries in critical sectors like oil and defense, they will invite secondary sanctions. So when India-Russia signed the S-400 deal, and when the initial payment was being made, US was threatening India with secondary sanctions under CATSA law. But we ignored the American threat, as S-400 missiles were critical for India's air defense against China. India-Russia went ahead with the deal, and we bypassed the sanctions as well. What India did was, we made the payments in Indian rupees to Russian banks which have branches in India. Russian banks like VTB, Sberbank, they have Indian branches, and here the payments were made in Indian rupees, which Russia later converted to ruble. So such alternate payment routes have been explored before, and India wants to work out the best possible route so we can bypass the sanctions and secure our defense and energy security. Ensure that Russia also receives timely payments, as Russia has been a very, very reliable supplier. So this is a testimony to the strong trust-based relationship between India and Russia. Both are time-tested friends. Despite the small issues they have in the relationship, they've always found a way to work with each other, ignoring Western pressure. All right? So that is why this topic is very, very important. Now, as we come to the last part of the discussion, as promised, we will take up one international organization of the week. We will discuss some important facts and analysis which will help you both in prelims and mains. If you look at previous papers, we have got a lot of questions based on international organizations and as well as on treaties and conventions. This time we are going to talk about IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, which has been in news frequently over the last few days. IMF is in news because of Pakistan's grave economic crisis. Pakistan is seeking a bailout package, and it has negotiated with the IMF, and IMF has placed new conditions on Pakistan in order to be eligible for this bailout package. And in Sri Lanka, IMF has again been providing emergency support. It has extended the emergency funding which was given last year, and this has been supported by the Paris Club of Creditors. The Paris Club is an informal group of various creditor nations which provide loans to smaller countries. They back and guarantee the loans which are given to smaller developing nations. So recently the Paris Club was in news for providing financial assurances to the emergency support that Sri Lanka has received from the IMF to overcome its economic crisis. So both our neighbors have taken support from IMF. They are negotiating with IMF constantly. Even Bangladesh is going through a crisis, and it is in talks with IMF for a possible assistance package. So this makes IMF very, very important for our prelims, also for the mains. So let's take a look at some important points. The International Monetary Fund is a global financial institution, a major financial institution. It is headquartered in Washington, D.C., and more than 190 countries are members of the IMF. This institution was established in 1944 following the Bretton Woods Conference, which also led to the establishment of the World Bank group of institutions. That's why World Bank and IMF collectively are also known as Bretton Woods institutions, because they were established following the Bretton Woods Conference. So the IMF plays a critical role in the global economy. You should understand its mission, its objective. The primary role of the IMF is to stabilize the global economy, to provide financial stability, ensure there is global monetary cooperation between various countries, facilitate international trade, promote job opportunities, sustainable growth, and reduce poverty around the world. So this is a widespread mandate of the IMF, and its primary focus is to ensure financial stability in countries and around the world. So whenever a country faces a financial crisis, especially balance of payments crisis or BOP crisis, or foreign exchange crisis, when a country is going bankrupt, so at such critical moments, the IMF steps in and provides a bailout package to help out these countries. India, for example, was hit by one such crisis in 1991 when we faced a BOP crisis. We were running out of foreign exchange reserves. We didn't have enough reserves left for sustaining our imports, similar to the crisis what Sri Lanka and Pakistan are facing. So India not just initiated LPG reforms on one hand, but we also took support of the IMF and we obtained a bailout package. So IMF is seen as the lender of last resort, the global lender of last resort. Just like RBI is considered as the lender of last resort within the Indian banking system, similarly the IMF provides emergency financial support through a bailout package for countries that are facing a serious financial crisis. It plays a critical role to help out these countries which are facing BOP forex crisis, and the money which is provided, it comes from a pool which is contributed by the members. To be a member of IMF, you have to contribute certain amount. There is a quota given to every country. According to the quota, you have to contribute funds into the pool, and from this pool, bailout packages are given for countries facing financial problems. They can borrow money from the IMF from this pool which is created. But the problem is IMF's support is conditional. The IMF places many conditions, and only if the country fulfills the condition, then IMF will provide the bailout package. This is seen to affect the economic sovereignty of the country which is taking support. India had suffered from this in 91 because IMF forces a country to devalue its currency, which will help foreign countries and foreign exporters. It will force economic reforms. It will force the country to open up its markets for foreign investments and foreign produce and foreign products. It is seen to benefit the Western countries in particular because IMF is dominated by the European Union and the United States. Western countries dominate the IMF. So there is a criticism against IMF that it uses the crisis situation to force conditions on other countries which are taking the help, which compromises their economic sovereignty. Even Pakistan, Sri Lanka have problems in taking help from the IMF. That's why the negotiations between Pakistan and IMF has been dragging for several weeks. So the IMF has brought out a unit called SDR, or Special Drawing Rights, which is the international reserve asset of the IMF. Just like you have reserve currencies like the dollar, euro, etc., the IMF has created an international reserve asset. It was created in 1969, and it acts as a supplement to the official reserves of the member countries. This reserve unit or reserve asset, it is created by bringing a basket of global reserve currencies together. You can see the chart here. SDR, or Special Drawing Right of IMF, is made up of a basket of reserve currencies including the US dollar, the euro, the Chinese renminbi, Japanese yen, and the British pound. These global reserve currencies, the top 5 currencies of the world are brought together in a basket to create this asset called SDR, special drawing right. Member countries can offset this for their official reserves. They can even carry out transactions using SDR if required. It addresses the long-term global need for foreign exchange reserves to continue foreign trade. So this is a reserve asset that IMF has created. It is allocated to the members in relation or in proportion to the share they have at IMF. The quota they have, the contribution they have made to the IMF, based on that, SDR assets are allocated to the different members. Now the problem with IMF is that US and European Union have dominated the IMF and they have not allowed reforms to take place. This is a common complaint amongst other members including India and the BRICS countries. Developing emerging economies like Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they've all repeatedly complained that even though the quota has increased for these countries, even though they are contributing a greater share to the IMF funds, their voting share has not increased. Most of the voting share has been reserved by Western countries. That is how they are dominating the IMF. Even though the contribution has gone up for these countries because of increasing quota, voting share has not gone up. So that is why BRICS countries led by India are pushing for reforms of IMF. Since reforms were not happening, Western countries were stalling the reforms, the BRICS has created a parallel institution, a rival of the IMF. Now I want you guys to find out which is this institution of BRICS which is seen as a counter to the IMF. Take this as an exercise and post this in the comment below. Which is the institution created by BRICS which acts as a rival of the IMF? It provides emergency financial assistance to countries which work with BRICS. Not just to the BRICS members, but even other countries which work with BRICS. So please find out the name of this institution that BRICS has set up to rival the IMF and post the answer in the comments below. Now let's come to the last topic, places in news. Every week we shall take up 1 or 2 places which are in news so that you can answer any map-based question in your prelims. This will broaden your understanding of geopolitics. So please keep an atlas or a map ready because we will look at important locations and places. We are going to talk about West Bank and Gaza Strip because these conflicted areas of Palestine, these are Palestinian territories which are considered to be occupied by Israel. So these territories are in news over the last few days because Israeli forces have carried out many controversial operations at places like Jericho, Nablus, Jenin. At these Palestinian territories, Israeli forces and intelligence agencies have carried out counter-terror operations and many Palestinians have been killed. Israel has claimed that these were terrorists, Palestinian terrorists. But Palestinian authorities have defended that these were civilians. It has led to a major controversy and has increased tensions again with regard to the Israel-Palestine conflict. So ever since Israel broke the two-state solution and unilaterally declared independence, it has occupied Palestinian territories. It has prevented Palestine from forming a country. And today Palestinian territories are reduced to 2 regions, that is Gaza Strip over here and West Bank over here. Now, you have to identify important geographical locations. See, Israel as a country that you see here in the map, it is surrounded by Egypt. This is the Sinai Desert, the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt. This is Jordan. This is Syria. This is Lebanon to the north. And here you have the Mediterranean Sea. All right. So this is Israel. Israel has drastically expanded its territory over the years, and Palestinian territories have been limited to the Gaza Strip over here facing the Mediterranean and West Bank over here, which includes the sacred city of Jerusalem, which is right at the center of this conflict. All right. So these are the Palestinian territories. The Gaza Strip is largely controlled by a terror group called Hamas, which is fighting for Palestinian liberation. It targets Israel and US, and Israel hits back at Hamas in the Gaza Strip. West Bank and other Palestinian territories are controlled by Palestinian Authority, which is based out of Ramallah over here. Jerusalem that you see here, which is supposed to be the future capital of Palestine, has been largely controlled by Israel itself. And this is the sacred city, the birthplace of all 3 Abrahamic religions. You can also see the Dead Sea over here, the popular Dead Sea, that borders Israel, West Bank and Jordan. This is the Jordan River. Okay, you can see the Golan Heights over here towards the Syrian border, which Israel has occupied from Syria. You can see the Gulf of Aqaba over here, which is shared between Israel, Egypt and Jordan. It opens towards the Red Sea, the strategic Red Sea. You can also see important places like Tel Aviv and Haifa, the port town of Haifa, which was liberated by Indian soldiers during the World War. Indian soldiers from Mysore, Hyderabad and Jodhpur fought for liberating Haifa during the World War. They fought against the Axis powers. So there is a memorial here even today paying tribute to Indian soldiers and their contribution. It's a very important location for India-Israel relations. India has big investments here. Recently, last week, Adani Ports has bought Haifa port. It has invested in the strategic Haifa port. Right? So that is the reason why Haifa is very, very important. So these are some important locations you should be familiar with. I hope this really helps you in answering map-based questions. UPSC tends to pick such conflicted areas and it will ask map-based questions. So let's do this every week. We'll cover one international organization or a treaty or a convention, and we'll also look at some places that are in news. So I hope this initiative helps you in your preparation. And if you're liking it, all you have to do is support us by liking the video. Like I said, 2000 likes on this video. That's the target. Let's see if we can get to that. Also comment below. Let me know which topics you would like to cover in the next class. And I'll see you again next week. Till then, take care. Have a good night.